me today attorney Nathan Gouen of Gardberg and Kemmerly. He's a veterans disability attorney, and he's going to talk with us about compensation ratings and kind of unpack that topic, which there's a lot of questions around that. So Nathan, thanks for being with us today.
It's no problem. I'm always happy to give some useful information, well, hopefully useful information out there to veterans and anyone who's looking for it.
It's always very useful, and I love having you on the show.
I appreciate it.
Let's start off and explain to us what are these compensation ratings? Kind of explain that. And how are they factored into a veteran's disability claim?
Okay, so I know we've talked about service connection before. So when you get something service connected, it can be one issue, it can be multiple issues. Each of those will get a compensation rating, a disability compensation rating. They'll usually be, they'll have different levels, 10, 30, 50, 20, whatever it may be for each one. And so for each particular condition, there's a diagnostic criteria. So for example, with diabetes, it goes 20, 40, 60, so on and so forth. But for each percentage, there are specific symptoms that are assigned for that. And if you have those symptoms, then obviously that's the rating you get. So it's kind of a mechanical way for them to say, I'm going through the records, I see X, Y, and Z. Okay, that fits. Like, what box does that fit? Okay, it's 30%. Well, then it's 30%. And then your individual ratings can be combined into your total rating.
So you're saying that all of these ratings depend on this diagnostic code. Is there any way to increase the ratings, possibly outside of that diagnostic code?
So there is. You can always do it through the diagnostic code. Sometimes what we find is, a lot of the diagnostic codes, especially for your back or knees, a lot of kind of like orthopedic issues, they'll all be based on these range of motion tests. Or for hearing loss, they're all based on this like word discrimination, the Maryland audio test. These basically tests that most doctors outside the VA don't use. And so it's somewhat challenging to get medical evidence to go for an increase, but there's always the possibility or the option to try to assert extra scheduler consideration. And essentially what that is asserting that, your disability picture does warrant an increase, but it's just that the diagnostic criteria does not fit your disability picture. They call it a disability picture. So you're saying, I understand that you're looking for range of motion in this particular range for me to get an increase, but, I still deserve an increase, but my records don't have range of motion testing, so that's not something that really happens. But if you look at functional impairment, the pain level, I'm not able to do the stoop, stand, different things like that, functional limitations, you can assert that you need to get an increase outside of those diagnostic criteria because they're not really getting the full picture of what's wrong.
Yeah. And what about if there are multiple disabilities? Do they get more than one compensation rating?
Yeah, so you'll get a compensation rating for any and all service-connected conditions. So if you have PTSD, you might have a 30% rating or 50% rating or what it may be. If you have diabetes, then you have a separate 20% rating. If you have your needs, let's say at 10% apiece. And then all of those are kind of wrapped into your total combined rating. And so that makes your total compensation rating, which is the rate that you get paid at. So if you're at 60% total, after they do all that kind of stuff, you'll get whatever the 60% rate of payment is per month.
Yeah. So do they just add them all together, the compensation ratings? If you have 50 for one, 60 for another, is it like over 100%?
I wish it was. And that's a question we get a lot. When we get a new rating decision, someone say, well, I got an increase from, 10% to 40% for this issue. Or, I have a 50% for PTSD and a 60% for my heart disease. But for those two issues, I only have an 80%. What gives? Because it should be, if you do the math, 110.
Right.
And that's not how it works with the VA. So all of it, and I think we've talked about this in a previous session, is the ratings reflect the impairment on your ability to earn. And so somehow or another, they've come up with a compensation ratings table. And basically what you do is you take the highest rated issues first, you find them on the thing, put them together, and they'll give you a number. And you keep doing that until you get your total compensation rating. So even if you add up all of your issues, and let's say you could be up to like 160%, well, that's probably only going to get you, unless you have unemployability, which I think we'll talk about later, it may only get you 80% or 90% from the VA. So it's not a one-for-one kind of situation.
Okay. Is this all kind of a quantitative analysis, or is there some subjectivity to it? I'm just wondering if they have an ability to appeal if the VA says, no, your combined rating is 80%. Is there any ability to move beyond that?
So the one way you can do that, strictly speaking, as far as the ratings themselves, that's really mechanical. But
Okay.
there is a way to kind of get around that. So what we file for a lot around here, or appeal, is for what's called individual unemployability benefits. And so
Okay.
what that is it's a way to kind of, it's another avenue you can take. So you can always try to get increases for your service connected conditions to get to 100% total, but that's really difficult. And the
Yeah.
higher your total rating gets, the less that increases will affect it. So, if you're at lower and you get a new rating, it's a lot easier to jump, let's say, from 20% to 50% total than it is to get from 70% to 100%. So what unemployability allows you to do is, if you have one service connected condition or multiple that come from one particular thing. So let's say you've got 20% for diabetes, but then you have neuropathies that are secondary to that, and those equal 60%. Or if you just have 60% for something like your heart, you can
Right.
apply for unemployability benefits. And
Okay.
on that same token is, if you have multiple service connected conditions that aren't necessarily linked together, like if you have PTSD at 50% and your heart at 60%, like we talked about earlier, and you're at 80% total, you would still meet the requirements, the schedule requirements. And then all you have to show is that you're unable to work
Okay.
based on those service connected conditions. And what that does is, it won't necessarily increase your total rating. You may still be at
Okay.
80%, but they can grant you unemployability benefits, and that'll get
Okay.
you the 100% payment rate.
Okay. So unemployability, so getting qualified as being the unemployability rating that I guess is good. It doesn't
Mhm.
necessarily mean I'm getting my terms mixed up, but you don't have to have 100% compensation rating in order to get unemployability.
Right. It's
Okay.
basically another avenue to 100% payment.
Okay.
So
Okay.
yeah, so it's a really helpful tool.
Yeah.
Not everybody, not all veterans know about it, and sometimes we'll
Yeah.
talk to some and they'll say, "Well, I've heard about this thing. I don't really know what it is.
I
It's just kind of this
see.
nebulous idea." But it's something that we employ a lot, and it's really really
Okay.
helpful to try to get that jump up.
Yeah. Yeah. And is that something that that is subjective? The unemployability, is that something where, because it's the other part, I think you've established it's very mechanical, but getting to from 80% to 100% through an unemployability rating, is that subjective at all, or is that also pretty mechanical?
It's kind of half and half. So you have to
Okay.
have a certain percentage to get there, and I kind of alluded to that earlier.
Yeah.
I can repeat it again, but it's kind of basically,
Okay.
there's certain ratings. If you have one thing or one particular etiology or origin that's 60%, or if you have multiples and it's 70% or more with at least one of those at 40%, then you meet the ratings criteria. So that's the mechanical part. You have to have a
Okay.
specific
Yeah.
amount of total, total rating. And there's different ways to go about that. But the unemployability aspect, what they're judging is based on, they're judging whether you can perform greater than marginal employment. And what that
Okay.
means is, if you can do work that would put you above the poverty line. So
Uh-huh.
that part of it's more subjective. And a
Yes.
lot of that, like we talked about before, nexus statements are really helpful there. Or if you get Social
Okay.
Security disability benefits, that's not binding, but it's something that's really persuasive towards demonstrating that you're unable to work due to your service-connected conditions,
Okay.
especially if your Social Security rating or your Social Security disability benefits are based on disabilities that are also service-connected. So that
Okay.
part's a little subjective, because you have
Yeah.
to just show,
Yeah.
to convince one person that you're unable to work based on
Yeah.
these conditions that are rated at a particular, standard.
Yeah. Thanks for clarifying that. It's a little hard to wrap your head around all of that.
Yeah, it gets a little jumbled up sometimes.
Yeah, yeah, but you explained it very well, so
I
I think
appreciate
that's
it.
great. Well, now, Nathan, if yeah, I know that you practice in the area of veterans disability, and if someone has questions, how can they reach you or your office?
A couple of different ways you can do it. So you can call us at 251-343-1111, or you can go to our website, gardberglaw.com. That's GARDBERGLAW.com. Or you can contact us at vacontact@gardberglaw.com, and that goes directly to our VA department. And we can answer questions or evaluate your most recent rating decision, and see what we can do to help you out or answer any questions that you might have.
Excellent. Well, these shows are getting pretty popular. We're getting a lot of people tuning in, and that's because of you. So, as
I don't know
always,
about that, but it's very flattering.
great
I
job.
appreciate the viewers.
Yeah, and also for those of you watching or even on the replay, if you have questions, feel free to put them into the comments section on this page, and we'll get Nathan to answer them for you. So,
yeah, absolutely. Ask away, and I'll be more than happy to give you an answer.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, Nathan, thanks for being with us today.
All right, thanks, Cindy. I appreciate you having me on again. Looking forward to the next time.
I am too. Okay, and to those of you watching, thanks for being with us today. We'll talk to you again soon.